you can't buy. So basically what happens is when you run this, right, what the computer does is it first saves this in the local storage, right? We mentioned this before about how variables are stored locally, like within the computer, right? Then what the computer does is it's going to check in order. So it's going to first go through the first statement. If the first statement is true, it's going to do the condition that's stated below. So this is the condition right here in the parentheses that has to be met. And this is called the return value, right? Basically, this print only happens if the first condition is met. And the same thing with this, right? So if we run this, we see that the computer is returning you can't buy. The reason for that is that we set money equal to 10 and it met the condition of only this if statement. Okay. So basically what we're seeing is that you can use this for like all different types of operations. So any of the like operations we talked about earlier, you can use it for. You can also use it for like a bunch of different variable types, but it has to follow the same rules we mentioned before, which Orion told you about, like data type matching. Well, basically the if statement allows you to print like a custom statement, right? So the if statement like right now doesn't seem like a lot, but it's super important because like for a lot of like games and like things that you guys interact with, there's a lot of different things that happen like based on what you do. Yeah, we'll talk about the else statement like in 1 second, right? Yeah. So yeah, first let's like do a little practice exercise. So let's say we have the variable money equals 4, right? I want you guys to write like a 2 series of if statements and have like one of them print like a custom message. So it's very similar to this, but just make it for this variable and make sure that one of the if statements actually happens. So yeah. All right. Yeah. Try to get your answers in the chat. I can, if you guys don't like understand, I'll just go over it quickly. Okay. I'll just wait another minute. Okay. So somebody just sent an answer in the chat. Let's see if these work. So yeah. Okay. So it looks like both of these statements are correct. Whoever put it in the chat. So basically this is the same thing as before. It's just that like we're changing the comparison because this number is like obviously smaller, right? Okay. So does anyone have any questions before I move on to like the next thing about if statements? Okay. So the next thing that comes after if is something called else if, right? Or it's referred to as elif, right? So basically what this is, it's just another way for like the computer to check something, right? So how this works is you usually will have like an initial if statement, right? So let's say for this case, we have if money is greater than 20, print like nice or something like that, right? So this is our initial condition, right? Now, what we would do after this is we can do elif, right? So what this means is if the first condition isn't true, right, then you go to the second condition. So a lot of you guys might be wondering like, oh, what's the difference between this? Like, what's the difference between using two if statements and then also doing if and elif? Well, there's a pretty big difference, right? The difference is that for the if and elif, right? An if statement isn't contingent on the other condition. So like, I'll just do a quick example, right? Let's say you have these two statements, right? Just like ignore the response, right? If we run this program, we see that both of these things get printed, right? If you guys notice, okay? So it's going through both of the if statements and then it's printing. So let's say we were to change this to an elif, right? Notice how only the first if statement comes out. So you might like if you look at this, right? You notice that both of these conditions are true, right? So how come the other one got printed, but this one didn't? It's very simple, right? Elif is basically if that only happens if the first condition isn't true, right? So notice how like this, right? This condition is true because we did greater than or equal to, right? And it met the first condition. As soon as the computer meets the first condition, it doesn't need to run through all of these. That's what elif is, right? So the reason you have this is, for example, right? If there's only one correct answer, like for a multiple choice exam, right? And your computer wants to check it, you don't want to waste time going through a bunch of like combinations, right? So I'll give like a conceptual example, right? Let's say you're taking a multiple choice test. There are 4 options, A, B, C, and D, right? Let's say the answer is C, okay? So we don't want the computer to go through all of the like different combinations, right? Like let's say our first if statement is if C, if answer equals C, right? If the answer is equal to C, there's no reason for the computer to check the other variables, right? Because there's only one right answer. So that's why you're using elif, right? Elif means that if the first condition isn't true, then you go through the next condition, right? Okay. So does that make sense? Because this can sometimes get like really confusing. So if you guys have questions, like make sure you ask about like the difference between elif and if. No question?
I didn't really get it. Can you explain that again?
Okay, yeah. So basically you have like an if statement is a condition, right? You're asking the computer to check something, right? So let's just look at this like chain. I'll just re-explain this example, right? Ignore everything else, right? What exactly is this if statement doing, right? The first one is checking if the money is greater than or equal to, right? So what that means, what like the elif does, right, is only if this isn't true, it goes to this, right? So basically your computer, right, it's checking if money is greater than or equal to 4, right? So because money is greater than or equal to 4, because 4, it's greater than or equal to, right? The computer isn't checking this, right? But if you change this to if, right, the difference between else and elif and if is just that like your if is just completely independent, right? So like let's run this if, right? Both of these are coming because you never told the computer that if this is true, this can't be true, right? Like look back to the multiple choice example, right? If there's only one answer, the answer is C, there's no way that the answer could also be D, right? So you don't want to waste your time checking if the other answers are right. But like in some cases, let's say that there can be 2 possible answers, right? Then you can have 2 different if statements. So does that make sense? The difference between elif and if? It's like the difference.
That makes sense now.
Okay, yeah. So another thing is that you can actually like have multiple if statements within like one if statement. And the way you can do this is with the and or the or operator, right? So basically what or does is that like, let's say we have both of these things, right? Instead of having them as 2 different if statements, let's say they have the exact same output, right? Or you want to make sure that 2 things are the same, like 2 different things are the same, right? Then you can use the if output, right? So let's say you have money, right? You want your money to be, let's say, greater than or equal to 2. You want it to be greater than 2, but you also want your money to be less than 4, right? So by using the and, it checks both the first condition as well as the second condition, right? If that makes sense. So now if we have like, let's say print hello, right? We'll just say hello for now, right? So notice how it's, oh, okay, yeah. The reason it's not printing is because the money isn't less than 4, right? Even though it's greater than 2, it's not less than 4 because we didn't put less than or equal to, right? So now let's change this to a double equal sign and see what it outputs, right? Notice how it prints hello. The reason is that now we're meeting both conditions. So you use the and statement if you want two different things to be true. This is like if you want to compare your variable to multiple things and everything has to be true, right? The other thing is the or operator. So let's say only, yeah, somebody put something in the chat. Yeah, you can put if statements inside if statements, but like that's for something later. Like we'll explain that later to have like if statement chain. But this is just like if you want to compare, like if you want two things to be true. So the other thing is the or statement, right? So let's say if you say if money is greater than 2 or money is less than 4, right? And you do print hello. So now what this is doing is only one of these statements have to be true, right? So let's just run this, okay? So let's just change this back to the original one, right? Just so like we can get some perspective and you guys can actually understand, right? So the difference between this is notice how there's only one hello. The reason for that is for the first if statement, the number like money, right, has to be greater than 2, but also less than 4, right? But for the second one, it's the same set of conditions, but only one of them has to be true. It doesn't matter if the other one is false, right? So use the or statements if there's like multiple possibilities, right? And this is comes back to what I said earlier, right? Let's say you're taking a multiple choice exam and your teacher messes up and like B and C can both be correct, right? You would write like if answer is equal to B or answer is equal to C, right? So basically that's how you can like make it so that there's multiple possibilities instead of writing a lot of like different if statements. Okay, so does that make sense? Like how to use and or? Okay, so the final like operator is basically else. So else is like an operator without a condition, right? So what that means is that else is basically your way of telling, it's the end of an if statement, right? Basically, you're telling your computer if none of the conditions are true, then you're gonna default like give this like answer, right? So let's just do a quick conditional set. So let's say we have if money is greater than 20, print buy a gift, right? And then let's also say that Aleph money is greater than 10, can buy a car, right? And then finally is else. Yes. Okay. So let's look at the statement, right? So let's say we make money equal to like $5, right? So what is this if statement like set of conditionals going to do, right? First, it's going to check if money is greater than 20, right? If money is greater than 20, then it's saying, oh, you have enough money, like you can afford to buy a gift, right? Next, what it does is if this isn't true, it then checks is you have more than $10, right? If you have more than $10, then it says you can buy a gift card, right? See, now the else statement, right? If both of these aren't true, right? If your card isn't greater than 20 and isn't greater than 10, then what the computer is default saying is that you can't buy anything, right? Because if you look at this logically, if the amount of money you have isn't greater than 20 and isn't greater than 10, then it's between 1 and 10, right? Which is why you probably can't buy a gift for like $5, right? So that's the difference between using an else statement. You can also use an else statement, but the problem with an else statement is that oftentimes you'll have like a bunch of different conditions that have to be met, right? Like you could do this with an else statement, say like elif, if you can put like both of these statements into one, right? You can say like money is greater than 20, or yeah, money is greater than 20 or not greater than 20, right? I'm not gonna like waste the time of typing it out, but basically like you could just type like all this, like the possible situation which isn't true. It's like, let's say we were saying money is equal to 20, right? You could just type like elif money not equal to 20. But oftentimes this is much faster because if you have like 20 different if statements, you don't want to put all of them into like one elif statement. So you just use else. Yeah. Does that make sense of like when to use else and when to use elif? Like does it make sense when you're supposed to use all of these different like conditional statements?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. Somebody asked a question. If you have more than $30, can you buy a gift card? Or if you have more than $20 but less than $30, you can buy. No, okay. So like what this is doing, let's say you have if you have more than 30 bucks, right? It's just gonna default to the first if statement because remember we said an elif statement, right? So if you said if statement, right? Like we can just test your theory, right? Let's say money is equal to 30, right? If you do an if instead of an elif, notice how it outputted both of them, right? It said you can do both. You can buy both. No, you just do two ifs. Or like, oh, okay, yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, like if you can do an or statement, or you can just do like this double if. So like you could also do, you can do if money is greater than 20, right? You can just say print, like you can buy a card as well, right? Like if you just have to like do that with the print statement, right? But basically like the only way for you to get both of them to output is if you make two different ifs. Like you can't use an elif because an elif means that only like one statement comes out, right? So does that answer anything? Yeah. Like, yeah, there might be another way. Like we're probably not going to cover that in this lesson. So yeah. Okay, let's move on to the final concepts, which is while loops. So basically a lot of times like you want to repeat an action multiple times, and in that case you want to use a loop, right? So basically the purpose of using a loop is like if you want to add something like repeatedly, right? So let's say you want to like subtract 1 from 7 like 20 times, right? Hypothetically, like if you want to do that 20 times or you want that action to continuously happen, it's very inefficient for you to just write like num equals 7, right? And then write num equals 7 minus 1, num equals 7, like, or num equals num minus 1, right? And then just keep writing that, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense because it wastes too much time, right? So what you can do is you can use a loop. So I'll give a quick example, right? Let's say you want a loop to print every number from, let's say like 7 to 1, right? So what you can do is, right, you when using the while loop, you just type while, right? And then it's similar to an if statement, right? You want a condition. So how many times do you want this action to repeat? So you want every number from 1 to 7, right? And you're starting from 7 and going down. That means that as long as your number is greater than 0, that's what you want. That's like how long you want the while loop to happen. So let's say for the sake of like the example, let's just put num equals 0, right? So we put a colon here, and then what happens is let's just do print num, okay? So basically right now what's happening is that this is gonna print infinitely, right? Because we didn't actually add like a condition or like show it getting subtracted. So what I mean by that is like, look, if num is equal to 7, right? We're not changing how much like the value is decreasing, right? So it's just gonna print 7 like a bunch of times. So we can run this, right? Notice how it's gonna keep printing 7, right? The reason is because this condition is never met, right? So the way you want to meet a condition, let's say you want to subtract or add, right? So if you want to subtract, you can do either num equals num minus 1, right? Or you can also, there's another format, you can just do this minus equals 1, right? So both of those are the same thing. Essentially what happens is every time the while loop runs, these actions get performed, right? So if we run this, yeah. Yeah, wait, give me 1 second. I think I broke my computer with the 7. So But yeah, basically what this would do is it would subtract like not it would subtract one every time the while loop runs. So like what would happen is you would get like this, right? You would get 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, and 2. So, all right, just give me like 1 second. Let me just delete this and then yeah, I'm gonna just reload the page. I don't think that was like smart for me to put like the infinite side in. So let me just reload it quickly. Yeah. Okay, so we're back. So let's just like try out the loop really quickly, right? So we have this, right? So if we run this, notice how it prints 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? So it went through all of the numbers, but it stopped at 0. That's because we explicitly said that it has to be greater than this, right? So like, for example, let's just say we change this to like negative 1, right? Now it's good. So notice how it includes 0, right? Because 0 is greater than negative 1. Okay, yeah. So let's just do like a quick practice problem. So you guys should try to make a while loop that prints like all of the odd numbers. So use this and try to get something that prints like every single odd number. It'll be like the same format as this, but the only difference is you want to print like every other number.
Is there a limit to the number of odd numbers you can print?
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. Just start from 1 and then you can just do the first 10. First 10. So 10th odd number is 11 or 9. I don't know. Yeah, probably like 9 or 11. But yeah, you can just pick it. Doesn't really matter. I just want to see if you guys can like figure out how to get the odd numbers to be printed. Okay, yeah. So it looks like someone put some code in the chat. So let's just see if this works. Oh yeah. Yeah, so this code is working. The reason is because before, when we're doing -1 or +1, we're showing every number, right? If you add two, that means that each time the loop goes, instead of just adding 1, it adds 2. So it's skipping every number. So that's why it shows 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and then 11. All right. So we're gonna do one more practice problem, and then I guess we can end class. So this one is gonna be like a combination of like a lot of the things you guys have learned. So give me 1 second. Okay. So try to make it so like if someone inputs a number, make a program that checks like whether the number is even or odd. So you make it so somebody enters a number and then it says whether the number is even or odd. So yeah, this is like a combination of the conditional statements we learned and then also the input, which we learned from last week. All right. Try to make sure to put in the chat. Yeah, if no one puts anything in the chat, we'll just go over it quickly. So I'll wait like another minute. Okay, so it looks like you guys are a bit confused. So this is actually super simple, right? So let's just say what we're gonna do is, let me just clear all this stuff. So let's just say we have a variable number, right? So we said number equals input, enter a number, right? Colon, right? So now what we want to do is we want to get, so we do if number is divisible by 2 equals 0. So sorry, not divisible. So this is like the remainder, right? So this is what you do to check if something is even, right? Because if there's 0 remainder, then any number that's even is always divisible by 2, right? So we can do print number is, oh, sorry, number is even, right? And then we can also do else print number is odd. Okay, so let's just run this and see what it says, right? So it says enter number. I put in 2. Okay, it looks like we got an error. Aryan.
Yeah, what's up?
Yeah, it's saying an error for this question. So yeah.
Wait, I think you can convert the input into an integer.
Oh yeah, my bad. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, good catch actually there. Okay. So yeah, you need to convert this input into a string or into an integer, right? So yeah. So basically what this is gonna do is it's checking if the number is divisible by 2 and then else. So this is just using the input function. So this is basically how we do it. And also good catch, you need to make sure that you convert it because you can't have a string be like divisible by 2, right? Okay. So does anyone have like any questions overall like for the lesson? Okay, someone put something in the chat, but yeah. So that looks correct. So does anyone have like any questions or like anything that they want to say? And also for the homework, if it's not working, like we'll post it today. Make sure you email us earlier, so that way like we can fix it.
Yeah, so the homework is posted. Like it just got posted. So it's just a screenshot. Obviously, like you might not be familiar with some of the things, or like it's just like your first introduction. Obviously, you can search things up, search how to do it if you want, search specific things up, or you can just type in the Google Classroom comments, and then we'll be there to help you like as soon as possible. So like just try your best on all these problems, and then next class we'll review it as well in the beginning of the class.
Okay, yeah. So someone before you guys go, someone brought up a good point. So I don't think we went over this, but we'll just do it over quickly. So remember how we said how you can convert data types? So you can actually just do the same thing with this if you just put an integer around it. So this will just prevent it. So it automatically is like assigning the data type, right? So you can do the same thing for other. If you change this to string, it will set as a string float. So yeah. Okay.
So
So if
before
there
the
are no
class,
questions,
yeah, before the
go
class,
ahead, Orange.
make sure to fill out the Google form. It's just like feedback for day 2, I guess. And the video will be posted, I think, like 15 minutes after class because it takes time to convert, and the homework will also be posted. So just make sure to complete the form.
Okay. Yeah. So after you guys complete the form, you are free to leave. Right, someone has a question about the Google form. They're saying that option 2, something about option 2.
But on the Google Form option 2 is supposed to be no. Let me check. Yeah, that's no. That's no.
Can you guys post like a slideshow or something with the concept that we learned today?
Yeah,
Uh,
we'll,
Yeah, the
yeah, we'll
lecture will
post
be out.
something. Yeah, we'll, if you guys want like more of something on paper, we'll post this thing called like Google Colab, which has like a bunch of notes that we take from the curriculum. So that's just like a slideshow type of thing.
Thank you.
We'll post
Fine.
that probably today or tomorrow to just look at. And if we forget, just feel free to email us, and then we'll.
Okay.
Yeah, the homework is an assignment. I think it's already there. You should check in the stream.
Oh yeah, I'll post it as a classwork too. But yeah.
Oh, and then-
Don't worry about that. But yeah,